Up everybody, I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today we are talking about the best decks from this season in Marvel Snap while looking at the top 8 from this week's community gaming tournament, which I think is a nice vessel that allows me to, this was a very varied top 8, all players playing a different deck. And I think that's a nice opportunity to talk about just this season as a whole, to put a bow on it, but also I'll be giving some real deck lists that players have been using this week. So if you are looking to still rank up that infinite ladder or spend some last minute infinite conquest tickets, these decks could be good options. I will also mention that I'm giving away a season pass for this season in this video. So if you are subscribed and you leave a comment on this video, you'll be entered into a giveaway to win a season pass or potentially some mystery variants. I've got some other smaller codes to give away. It's not too late, season's almost over, but if you've been playing this whole season, you can still earn those rewards, and I'll be giving that out probably tomorrow, so you've got enough time to make sure I can send out the codes and get in contact with you. And yeah, so that is something to look forward to. Subscribe and leave a comment. And without further ado, let's hop into this top 8. I've got all of the names of the top 8 competitors on the screen here, so I think that was cool to look at. And I also have to apologize as well. I kind of made a mistake. You're going to notice there's some weird discrepancies in this video where we're looking at some things pre the previous patch. Now, all of the tournament decks that I'm going to be talking about are the stuff that's going on right now, while Rockslide is a 4-5 and Shadow King is a 2-3 and Misery is a 4-8. I know this is going to be a little bit confusing. I set this up on the client that I played the Creator Gauntlet on over 2-3 weeks ago, so the buffs and nerfs have not gone through on this, but I'd already set it up. I didn't want to redo it. And speaking of the Creator Gauntlet, this is the deck that I played in the Creator Gauntlet, a Misery Darkhawk deck. And it's an interesting place to start here with this discussion. If you want to see more with this deck before it was nerfed, really before Rockslide was nerfed to a 4-5, you can check out my highlights from the top 32 of the Creator Gauntlet. And here's what I'll have to say. Here's what I have to say about this deck. My favorite thing about this deck, and what really made me drift towards it, was the easy snaps that you have from activating Black Widow multiple times. I think the reason to play this deck is because you can activate Black Widow multiple times over with Grandmaster, Misery, and then potentially even with Phoenix Force in some scenarios, and with Nico drawing an additional copy of it. The deck otherwise can potentially lack win conditions. In Marvel Snap, you do have to win 2 locations. This deck is kind of just trying to subvert that by making your opponent either not draw with Black Widow or draw some junk with Rockslide, Korg, and Spider-Ham. Otherwise, the deck's win condition is Cassandra Nova, Darkhawk, and Shadow King, with some random scenarios where you can also win. I mean, Grandmaster can win games, Phoenix Force can win random games if you're like locked out of certain locations. There is like a weird combo that can come up occasionally with, you get Nico on double mode, reactivate it and destroy it with Misery, and then bring it back with Phoenix Force. And all of these things will make it double and double and double again, and you get a really big Phoenix Force. But the issue with that is you're spending all of your turns to make one huge thing. And often, I won't say oftentimes, but there are times where this deck struggles to win a second location because you've got all of these like cheap cards that don't really add power, like Spider-Ham, Korg, Rockslide, Black Widow even, and Grandmaster. And not only do they not add power, but you're looking to Misery these things. And yes, Misery's a 4-8 now, but 8 power ain't really winning a location, really. I did play a slightly different version of this deck that also played Armor and White Widow. I I do think that that is still potentially a cool combo, and Armor has some other applications in the metagame if you're facing up against a lot of Destroy. Armor can also protect your Darkhawk from not only Shang-Chi, but also Rogue, because they could 50-50 hit the Armor. So I do think the Armor version of the deck is interesting, and White Widow remains a pretty interesting on-reveal card, but you need the Armor in there to protect from the Widow's, what is this? This is Widow's Bites. White Widow does Widow's Kisses. You need Armor in the deck to protect the Widow's Kisses from destroying themselves. That's the main function of Armor, and it could certainly be another route to play with this deck. Ken's Lucifer going a little bit more on the disruption here with Spider Ham, and I can't remember if I played the Hood or not. Everything else looks the same, so it must have been the Hood that I wasn't playing there. I think that this is... I said it like... I don't know. I went back and forth on it. I did ultimately think it was a good enough deck to play in the Creator Gauntlet, and no spoiler, I mean, yeah, spoilers there. I was very close to getting into the top 16 of that event, which I got 17th, but then if I got in the top 16, could have gotten the top 8th. It's really fun. If you haven't watched that video, go watch it. But I bring that up to say, like, I did do reasonably well, and I only played this deck the entire day, did not switch off of it. One of the huge reasons to play this deck as well, other than activating Black Widow a bunch of times, is if you think Arishem is a decent portion of the metagame, which it can be, having access to both Cassandra Nova and Darkhawk as cards that can get free wins on locations. I'll say free because, yeah, they can Shadow King you or Shang-Chi you or what have you. But other than that, it is nice to play both of these cards and get some free wins up against Arishem. I think that's about all I can say about Misery Darkhawk here. It is a pretty sweet deck. Again, some of these cards are changed a little bit from what I'm going to be showing off on these screens, but bear with me. And next we are looking at Bounce, which is a deck that you are probably familiar with if you've been playing a bunch this season. Bounce is everywhere. I'm going to give my camera one more chance here. If it freezes again, no more camera for the rest of the video. But despite this being a potential version of Bounce that you actually can see, this is not the version of Bounce that Mand Luca got second place with. They actually had Toxin in the deck instead of Agent Venom. I do think Agent Venom was in this deck for a large portion of the season, so I did want to showcase that as well. But yeah, now we've got a Toxin version of Bounce that eschews the Agent Venom entirely and is otherwise mostly a lot of Bounce stuff that we've seen before, but Toxin being a third Bounce card is pretty big news for an archetype that a lot of people like. I will also admit I vastly underestimated Silver Sable. This card has been really, really good in Bounce decks because, I mean, it's basically like on reveal +4. You don't always use the or know if you're going to be able to get to use the -2 on your opponent's stuff. I have had, we're going to get to Mysterio in just a second, but if you can get Silver Sable to land on a Mysterio or potentially like a Brood or something, that's really big. It does, so the main way to play around Silver Sable, just in case everybody's not up on it, is basically wherever they play their Silver Sable, that is the same location that you should play whatever card shrunk to Silver Sable, and then Shadow Kinging that location will undo all of the buffs that are positive on your opponent's side of the field and negative on your side of the field. This deck does have a bunch of other ways to get on reveal buffs: Hitmonkey, Sage, Rocket Raccoon, and potentially sometimes Nico, in addition to the Agent Venom. And that does mean that Shadow King can do some work against this deck, but also Cosmo. We saw Cosmo have a pretty big uptick in play for a pool 2 card or whatever it is, and one of the decks that we will look at will also be an Agent Venom and Cosmo deck. That was a pretty popular deck this season as well. But yeah, I think that Bounce was a pretty important part of this season, with Luca opting for the Juggernaut as a tech card here as well. You kind of have Shadow King if you don't have priority, and then Juggernaut if you do have priority. The other note that I wanted to touch on, though, was to do with priority. One of the reasons that Bounce is so strong is because you are able to not have priority going into the final turn, which allows you to dodge Shadow King. It does mean that you can get disrupted by something like Cosmo, but you have a lot more flexibility in the deck now with the activate on Black Swan, allowing you to freely bounce with Falcon and Toxin on the penultimate turn, and then still play a bunch of free cards with the Black Swan and get a really big hit monkey. So Bounce better than it's ever been. I mean, maybe that's not totally true, but at the very least now you've got 3 cards that can bounce, and you've got some really good on reveal cheap cards with both Rocket Raccoon and Silver Sable effectively being a +4, and then the Hood being like a +6 or something that you can utilize as well. So definitely a good time to be bouncing. And with that, let's bounce onto the 3rd place deck from Punk Pa Pow. And speaking of 3s, we've got Silver Surfer here. This is Silver Surfer with Serra and also with Gwenpool, which I think has been a little bit in and out of some Silver Surfer decks, but in this list it is in. We're also playing Forge here too, so a bunch of different ways to pump up your Broods and your Sebastian Shawls. In addition to the Silver Surfer, this list is not running Killmonger and not running Nova. That is another route that you can go, instead opting for Cassandra. And then a pretty cool combo here, we've got, in addition to Absorbing Man, which we often see paired with Silver Surfer, we also have Grandmaster. So you can set up for a crazy final turn of turn 5 Serra. I mean, turn 2, let's say you go Forge, turn 3 Brood, turn 4 Sebastian Shaw, or Iron Lad, or Gwenpool, though you probably need a few more 3-cost cards in play. Anyways, turn 5 Serra, turn 6 Silver Surfer, Absorbing Man, Grandmaster, and get 3 Silver Surfer activations. Pretty cool, pretty cool. So that is a neat little new tech that I've not really seen in Silver Surfer decks recently. I have not at least played Grandmaster in Silver Surfer, but I could be interested in giving this list a try. The Makari certainly helps with that ideal curve that I just described, and playing a few more 4s certainly also leads to Makari having some extra strength there, because you're really, like, the 3s are pretty trim in this list, a Silver Surfer list with only 6 3s rather. Now Iron Lad, if that hits Brood, that's going to count as a 3, and Absorbing Man, if it copies Brood, will also count as a 3, but really, like, I mean, those are kind of high rolly scenarios anyways, that you're not really concerned about counting your 3s, because Iron Lad making 6 power Broods seems pretty cool, but I like the ability to triple Surfer on the final turn with that Serra. If you don't have the Serra, then you also have Forge and Grandmaster to play alongside a 3-cost card for a reasonable amount of power on that 5th turn, and then you just finish up with Silver Surfer and like Sebastian or Copycat or something like that. So a few different potential lines with this deck. I definitely want to try out this brew here from Punk Papow, because I have not really seen it, but I have seen that a lot more people have been playing Gwenpool in their Silver Surfer lists, and also just kind of Gwenpool and Serra are seeing a lot of play. Priority, kind of name of the game. You want to be able to dodge Shadow King, which just got a buff. A huge way to do that is not only with Serra, but also Gwenpool has a pretty cool ability to keep all of your power in your hand, especially the specific curve of Gwenpool into Serra. You are then keeping most of those Gwenpool buffs, unless any went onto Serra, but other than that, you're keeping them all in your hand to throw out there on the final turn. And of course, there's always the play of turn 5 Serra, turn 6, 3 different 3-cost cards. That's always strong as well. Though, I guess you also have turn 5 Sarah, turn 6, like Forge, Brood, Silver Surfer, Grandmaster. That's a crazy, crazy final turn, especially with some Gwenpool buffs thrown in along the way. Now let's throw it over to our 4th place list, Ivankov with Scream, or Roller Coaster, or what else do people call this? I forget. I call it Roller Coaster. I think that's a cute name. Most people just call this the Scream deck because it wasn't a deck before Scream and now it is. And yeah, just utilizing Scream, Kingpin, and Kraven, and then a bunch of cards that make you move your opponent's cards. Spider-Man Miles Morales for a 1/6, Shadow King for really cheap interaction. And there you go, that's it, that's the whole deck. But 4th place in this tournament to wrap up the season, Scream was the first card that came to Spotlight Caches this season. Made a pretty big impact, and it was kind of a little, so here's the thing. This deck is not good when you don't draw Scream, right? So the question is like, is this a good deck? And it's pretty good. When you draw Scream, this deck can be really good. So yeah, it's a real deck. And one other thing, I was trying to think, were there any other big decks that aren't in this top 8? And one big deck that is not in this top 8 is just Madam Web Move. Now, it's kind of a deck from last season, so I didn't feel like it's not like Scream is a deck that really defined this season more because it's a deck from this season, but I will say Madam Move was still a pretty big deck this season too. One of the cool things about just Scream and Kingpin and Kraven is they also kind of just benefit from your opponent moving around stuff, which is, I think, like a very interesting battle because sure, you're getting benefits when they move stuff from Scream, but also they're getting benefits potentially from your Polaris and your Spider-Man, though you can mess with their Madam Web in interesting ways too. So I think that the Scream deck probably has the edge. It's not really a matchup I've played specifically myself, but I think it's kind of a cool matchup for just to like exist in Marvel Snap, to have like a move deck and an anti-move deck. It's like when there's destroy decks and then there's decks that just naturally want to play armor and Cosmo, like destroyer decks or something. I think that that is an interesting kind of matchup that can exist in the game. And here is another really powerful deck right now from Atlas, our 5th place finisher. We have Sarah Control, is typically what most players call this. This deck it's got the Gwenpool, it's got the Sarah, and it is very much trying to toss priority on the final turn. It also is playing Invisible Woman, which is really good at tossing priority, and Mysterio is kind of an interesting thing because you can develop it early and still get still have some 4 hidden power on there. Bishop is another way to get some extra power on there, but the whole point of this deck is to not have priority and then use Killmonger to blow up everything that the bounce deck is trying to do, and rogue your opponent and Shadow King them. And US Agent is a really good interactive card. I have found, so I played this deck, I want to say, for some reason or another, I forget exactly why. Oh, I think I was just trying to complete alliance bounties. By the way, join the Never Lucky Gamers if you're looking for an alliance. Quick plug from that, but I was diligently doing my alliance bounties and I dropped to like the top 20k on the post-infinite leaderboard. And then I started playing this deck, and all of a sudden I got back to the top 3k. So I gained 17,000 placements. I think this deck is really, really strong. Shadow King, again, is a little bit stronger now even, but it's just really, really good at tossing priority, and the main thing here is using Gwenpool on Mysterio is just a lot of fun and really, really powerful. This also has the combo of Agent Venom plus Mysterio, which makes all 3 Mysterios into 4 power, and then if you can put Gwenpool buffs on top of that, then you are looking at like, so if you can Agent Venom buff it, and then Gwenpool buff it, and then Sarah to make it cheaper, you are looking at a 1 energy card that adds like 24 power to the board, or 18 power to the board. Absolutely nuts, and not only that, it's pumping up your hit monkey. So it's like a 30 power card for just 1 energy. And then you can play some tech cards with your other energy. But really, really fantastic. And yeah, I just think this deck is really strong. I think that this is actually even making Morbius see some play now for the first time in a little bit. Or not Morbius, Mobius. Mobius M. Mobius here, seeing some play for the first time in a little bit. And even I have seen some people try to throw Mobius into Sarah just to make sure that you are teching for like the mirror. And it's not only this deck playing Sarah, of course, it's the Silver Surfer deck that is playing it. And Mobius also stops Beast and Black Swan from working. So Mobius stock is up right now. Also stops Anti-Venom. There is a deck that I think could maybe work. So this might be something that I try out as far as climbing with next season. I'm not sure how great of a ladder deck it will be, but I'm thinking like Mobius, Pixie, maybe Anti-Venom. Though that's not super important with Anti-Venom actually. It's good at stopping Anti-Venom. But Mobius, Pixie, and Sandman. I think Mobius plus Sandman is an interesting and underexplored combo in the game that I think could be pretty cool and could definitely punish people from playing Sarah decks. I mean, you drop them both on the same turn, so it doesn't actually stop the Sarah, but Mobius stops everything that Sarah is trying to do. So Mobius stock definitely up right now. And moving up on the list, we have Root Record, and again, I've got to swap out a card here. It is not Mr. Negative, it is Anti-Venom, because Anti-Venom, I don't have it on this account right here. Also, important to note, it's going to make this make a lot more sense. Remember, Storm is now a 4/5, which is why we are playing Zabu. So one huge new change with this season is the War Machine buff to an ongoing ability that made Storm into War Machine into Legion an incredible and really powerful and really annoying combo. And now you have to work a little bit harder if you want to try to make that combo happen, but it is still very possible, and that is what this deck is going for. This is a little bit more all in than some of these previous Storm Legion lockout lists were, but you can still make it work. So Zabu allows you to do that typical curve. It also, Zabu allows you to go turn 3 War Machine, turn 4 Storm, turn 5 Legion, just the same. Also, when you throw Anti-Venom in the list, if Anti-Venom can hit anything, then you also have the opportunity to curve out and lock your opponent out of the game. And then a surprising card here, Howard the Duck, makes an appearance because with both Jubilee and Iron Lad and a specific combo or a trio of cards here that you were trying to hit, becomes really important to know what is on the top of your deck. We also have Psylocke to allow you to play any of these 4-cost cards just a turn earlier, and then the rest of the deck rounds out with War Machine cards in the form of Ebony Maw and Infinite. Also, Doctor Doom filling kind of 2 roles here. One, it allows you to activate or get into the Stormed location. It's also a fantastic hit for the ramp of Iron Lad, Jubilee, and Anti-Venom. So a lot of cool stuff going on with this deck. You have to work a little bit harder now if you want to storm out all 3 locations. The other thing that I have seen some players doing recently, and I did a little bit of in the qualifying rounds for the Creator Gauntlet, I played Legion and War Machine in Arishem. I did not play Storm in that deck But the reason that I'm bringing it up is people have started to play Storm in that deck, because the other way that you assemble the combo of Storm, War Machine, Legion when both of these cards actually cost 4 is by having that extra Arishem energy at the start of the game, allowing you to do that. And I think, so the deck plays a few other cards now. I don't have this loaded up, but you can kind of imagine it here. It's these 3 cards, it's Arishem, it's maybe still some other big cards, but then it's playing Alioth, which is really good with Storm. It is also playing Professor X, just to have like additional lockdown options. Professor X being a combo with Alioth, because then you are more likely to hit with the Alioth if your opponent is locked out of a location. Professor X, though, also a combo with War Machine. And then it is also playing Cosmo, because similarly, Cosmo, when your opponent just is constricted on locations, we looked at Silver Surfer and even the Serra control deck and the bounce deck, all kind of get shut down by Cosmo, so this Arishem deck can just constrict them even further. And then you're also just playing Arishem, so you get to play a bunch of other fun stuff. And I think that's mostly it. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Previously, when I played Arishem and put Legion and War Machine in it, I did not put Storm in that deck. And part of the problem with Storm for me, even though I was doing some of those other things, Alioth, I realized that was pretty synergistic with Storm. If we remember the Loki nerf not too long ago, part of the reason that Loki nerf actually kind of made people stop playing Loki in Arishem even is a 2-power card in Arishem is a pretty big deal, because you can very easily run out of space on the board, especially with certain locations, and then you are in a spot where you just aren't able to put out enough power with just the random cards that are generated from Arishem. Storm being a 4/5 kind of helps in that direction. And I'll definitely be trying out Storm in Arishem with the War Machine Legion combo. Upcoming, I've not tried it yet. There's been a lot of other fun decks. I've been playing basically all of these other decks that I'm covering in this video, but unfortunately did not get to that one or this one. But this looks like a fun one to try out, especially if you have Anti-Venom and you were a big fan of War Machine Legion. You want to keep locking people out of the game. On to 7th place, we have Isan Jane with a pretty different deck. This is a tech deck, but it is not a Serra deck. This is just a deck that is playing Killmonger, Cosmo, a lot of things all over the place. One thing that I did think, or I did kind of just want to mention, just to have it out there, because this deck is playing Luke Cage and Shadow King. It is actually not playing Anti-Venom. It's playing Cosmo. Almost forgot to take that off the screen. It is curious though. I feel like a deck that is playing Shadow King and Luke Cage, now this deck's curve is pretty low, but you can use both of those cards to reset the negative affliction that you get from Anti-Venom, and I think that could be a pretty real strategy. This deck is already using both of those cards to get rid of the negative affliction on Valentina, and that's the main synergy, other than Shadow King just being a good card and Luke Cage being a pretty reasonable card tier 2. That's the main thing that we're going for. And then it's just solid Marvel Snap cards, a little bit of tech, Scarlet Spider just as a powerful way to play into trickier locations. Doesn't really have any other synergy than that in the deck. Not that that's synergy, just there's no synergy with Scarlet Spider. That's really what I mean to say here. And then we also have the Kitty Pryde plus Hope Summers combo, which I think is just always powerful. And then, right, Angela's in here too, so you can go Angela, Hope, and then Kitty Pryde and cycle through that. And it's a 1-cost card that's going to stay in your hand. I think that this deck is trying to, or similarly trying to toss priority in the same ways that some of those Serra control decks are, but without as much all in on that, and potentially hoping to be mid-rangey enough that it can get away with having a little bit more chances of just having priority, with some real ways to add some definite power to the board in the form of Scarlet Spider and Claw. This deck kind of just makes me want to talk about the Agent Stompy deck that was also pretty big this season. This was not a deck featured in the top 8, but honestly, this is probably my pick for deck of the season, and feels pretty similar to what we just looked at, though that deck maybe with like a little bit more interaction in the form of Red Guardian, but also a lot less potential to high roll. And this deck is also like a little bit more known, which does make you susceptible to ways to interact with it, right? Like people are packing a lot of rogues for the Iron Man Mystique combo. That's something that people are expecting, but I'm sure you've seen this deck use Bast and use Agent Venom to pump up a bunch of cards that have less power than that. Copycat's kind of a flex spot. Actually, most people don't play Copycat. I've seen a lot of speed in the deck actually as a card that gets like a small bonus from Agent Venom. What else have I seen? Not really sure, but I think that this slot is like the most flexible spot in the deck, and then it's just running some really powerful cards that all just get more powerful from both Bast and Agent Venom. No Mysterio clones in this version of the deck. Mysterio, not a combo with Thena, still a pretty good card though. And then Silver Sable, just making it in here as a solid 1-drop that again gets pumped up. But the main combo with this deck is pumping up Iron Man and Mystique, and then using Mystique to either copy Iron Man or Claw as huge haymakers on turn 5, but also if you are taking priority to then just go Cosmo Mystique on the final turn. And that allows you to be protected around a lot of different interaction, and it's also 2 cards, so it activates Thena. And this deck has just been really well-rounded, and I think a lot of top players' choice for the top deck. In the Creator Gauntlet, there were a lot. This was a huge portion of the metagame. A lot of players were rocking this, and I'm sure you've seen it a ton on the ladder, but I can't call it the best decks of the season. That's what I want to call this video, best decks of the season. I can't do that without talking about Agent Stompy, despite it not making a huge impact on this individual tournament. Then one last deck that I wanted to look at here was the 8th place list from Finn Snap. Now, this is not what I would normally put. I would say both this 7th and 8th place list, if you're still watching here, these are just kind of like bonus fun ones, but hey, I mean, bonus fun Phoenix Force deck seems cool, count me in. And this is not just a Phoenix Force deck. You might notice this is a Phoenix Force deck that is also rocking Deadpool. And Deadpool with Aranya and Agony as cheap ways to give it +2 power, plus all of the traditional ways to blow it up, just give you an additional line of attack here. And then we're playing Multiple Man, but we are not playing Human Torch, and we're playing Killmonger as well. And then the last thing that is in this deck is Nimrod, with the ability to Agony and Aranya to kind of like set up for the Nimrod to give it a little bit more power in lieu of Shuri. And then on the final turn, you want to play 2 different cards between Carnage, Deathlock, and Venom, and blow up Nimrod twice. And if you've got you can just do that. You can just play turns 1 through 4 Aranya and Agony, maybe like turn 3 Killmonger, turn 4 Aranya plus Agony. No, because then you couldn't activate this. Okay, yeah, just turns 1 through 4, just play Aranya and Agony. Turn 5 Nimrod, absorbing the Agony, getting the Aranya buff activated there. And then turn 6, play Deathlock, destroy it, Venom, destroy it again. You've got a 13 power Venom and 2 Nimrods at both of the other locations, right? 2? 1 Nimrod at one of the locations, 2 Nimrods at the other, but still, that's a lot of power at all of the locations, and a pretty cool deck, I think. And with that, I think that's going to be a wrap for me on the We Are Venom season. And for this video, don't forget to subscribe and comment if you want to be entered into my giveaway for a season pass. Get your hands on Agent Venom yourself. There's still time to, just click on all of those missions and do this weekend's weekend missions. Just win 4 times, probably with this deck. This one's pretty good, but there were some other options throughout this video as well. And that's it. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.